What's up, everybody? I am back with a reaction video. I just wrapped up Darksiders Genesis, so those are all the Darksiders game cutscenes that I've gone throughout that franchise, all up on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. Now, I came across this video by Pixel Demise as called "The Beauty of Death" for Darksiders 2. So I really want to check that out. I haven't seen this before, but it caught my interest. But before I continue, please like this video, leave a comment below, let me know what you guys think, and let's check it out.
You know of him already. He goes by many names. The Pale Rider, the Executioner, the Reaper, Death. But do you know him? Not the figure, but the being under the cloak. The personification of Death is a really common sight in popular culture. Normally seen clad in black robes and wielding a large scythe, he'll appear to claim the souls of the recently deceased and ferry them to the afterlife. Often serving as a cold and down-to-business angel of death, he'll give a combination of sarcastic wit to the humans he encounters and commentary on society and the nature of man to the viewer. However, there was one game that did something so different that it surprised me. Rather than attempting to make Death a dark, edgy, and awesome figure like he's so commonly portrayed as, they decided to make him weak, flawed, and human.
The eons have not answered the question. That one moment, brother, was it worth it?
Darksiders was a series that began in 2010. It took the Book of Revelations and the characters of the Four Horsemen and turned it into a character-driven story about the flaws of angels, demons, and everyone in between. One where the Charred Council was formed by the Great Creator to uphold the balance and mediate between heaven and hell. They had 4 enforcers who would punish those that broke the laws, the Horsemen. War, the most aggressive and the strongest. The wisecracking gunslinger Strife, the hot-headed and vengeful Fury, and the oldest and most powerful, Death. Each of the 4 were Nephilim, made from a mixture of angel and demon created by the demoness Lilith. They thirsted for battle and bloodshed, and massacred so many races that even the names of those victims have been burned away. However, these 4 Nephilim realized that this slaughter couldn't continue, and instead sided with the Council, betraying their kin to prevent them from disturbing the balance. The first game begins with War riding out after hearing the call that the apocalypse is beginning, only to learn that the 7 seals were not broken, and that he rode without the power of the Council at his back, damning humanity. Yet War knows, better than anyone, what the breaking of the seals will feel like. He knows they were broken, yet somehow no one else does. After his defeat by the demons and capture, he spends over 100 years in chains as the Council decides his fate. But before his story can truly begin, his older brother seeks to help him through whatever means that he can. In Darksiders 2, Death sets out to find a way to save War, not by redeeming him and proving War was correct in writing, but rather by undoing the crime in its entirety, by bringing humanity back from the dead. Unsure of where to even begin, he seeks out the Crowfather, who reveals Death's most guarded secret. Death didn't actually let the Nephilim die.
Let me pass. Not yet. That which you gave me, you will take it back. In exchange for its secrets, you agreed to keep the amulet. No. The voices, they curse and threaten without end. They cry to return. You must destroy it!
I cannot.
You annihilated their flesh. Why do you guard their souls?
Open the portal.
You will not pass while I live.
At this point, I was interested. We know little about the Crowfather, but what we have seen says that he is both ancient and very powerful. Yet Death is willing to fight him in order to protect his younger brother. Something else that caught my attention was his response to why he didn't let their souls die.
I cannot.
You are not.
It sounded pained and regretful, like he wishes he could undo his past actions. This was Death himself, the Grim Reaper, the Pale Horseman, and he regretted his past mistakes and was attempting to defend his loved ones. Seeing emotions that I myself have experienced, also felt by Death, wasn't something I was expecting to see, and I was very eager to see more. I've never quite understood why, so often in movies and TV, the Reaper always appears as cold and stoic. It is a useful character type, as it lets the author insert an extremely powerful figure that can call others out on their flaws without having any of his own. But pop culture's obsession with the uncaring and dry Death, while sometimes interesting, has gotten as, well, dry as the archetype itself. Few series try to go for something different, and if they do, it is often more comedy-focused, or the Reaper is just one of many, more of a job than a single person. The latter design especially is common in games, where the Reaper is often some sort of a special mini-boss, and barely exists outside of active combat. The Grim Reaper first appeared in the middle of the 13th century. The Black Death had spread throughout Europe, and in the span of just 5 years, it had killed almost 60% of the total population of the Western world. It was one of the worst pandemics ever seen in human history. Once it began to pass, people needed a way to personify the plague, to have a single thing to point to blame and curse for all of the problems. And so, the Grim Reaper was born, an artistic rendition of that wave of death, the skeleton of a corpse with a sharp scythe, cutting down humans like a farmer cuts his grain. The Grim Reaper has become a staple of pop culture, commonly being shown as the figure that takes the souls of the now dead, even if his original appearance never really did so. But there is another embodiment of death that has become mixed in with the Reaper. In Christianity, the Book of Revelations was a foretelling of the apocalypse. In it, as angels descended from heaven and demons rose up from hell to fight over the earth, 7 seals would be broken. With each of the first 4, a figure atop a horse would appear and bring some great calamity to the world. The 4th horseman, the only one to actually be named, was Death, riding a pale, sickly horse. He was given a 1/4 of the world to destroy, with the sword, with famine, plague, and with the beasts of the earth. This Horseman of Death has also become a staple in pop culture, due to the popularity of the 4 horsemen as a concept. In any fictional story dealing with heaven and hell, the horsemen are bound to appear, and Death is often the most powerful and most dangerous of the 4. While the 2 were originally completely separate things, with time they have blended together. The horseman's original design from the artwork made of the book was of a sickly man wrapped in sheets with a staff, but now he is more commonly shown with black robes and a scythe. Similarly, it's common to see the Reaper appear accompanied by a horse and calling itself the name Death. The embodiment of Death never really had an original personality. The Reaper was just the artistic personification of the plague, a symbol more so than a person. And the horseman Death only had a single sentence describing what he would bring to the world. Neither really had any personality, and perhaps that's the reason why Death so often appears with minimal emotion. Having no real personality, combined with being more of a symbol than a man, lends itself to cold and stoic characters. But I have never understood why he's stayed that way. over so many years since his popularity in fiction rose. There's a lot of potential that the character could tap into. It just never seems to be realized like how Darksiders did. In Darksiders, Death wasn't an emotionless figure. He cared for his Nephilim siblings, even if they were only siblings in name and not in blood. Cared enough to disobey the Charred Council and hold on to the amulet that had trapped their souls. They were horrid monsters that slaughtered and pillaged. Yet, despite that, he couldn't let go of them because they were family.
I killed Absalom once, Crowfather. If I could go back, I would see him spared.
You can see it even several eons later. When questioned about what he would do to save his younger brother War, Death says that he would storm the home of the angels.
Unless you truly mean to save your brother.
To save War, I would storm the White City.
Of that I am more than certain. But there is no need.
Or when the Elder Adard comments objectively how War stands in the middle of all that is currently happening, Death takes it personally, reaching for his scythe threateningly, defending War as if Idard claimed he was guilty.
To redeem War.
Heaven and hell battle upon the shattered earth. All creation trembles, and at the center of it all stands your brother.
He is innocent.
I never said he wasn't.
Death cares about them as a family, and he wishes to protect all that remains in his 3 siblings. He defends War when others blame him for the ruin of humanity. He used his skill in crafting to make Fury a refillable healing flask, due to how often she tends to get injured. And despite frequently fighting with Strife in the novels, he's been shown to protect and love his brother regardless. Out of all the horsemen, Death is the most empathetic and compassionate. He offers Thane, who wishes to die in battle, yet no longer has enemies to fight, that very death he seeks. And despite his dislike of Karn, the two end up growing much closer than you would expect by the end of the Forgelands. Out of the 4 horsemen, he is the only one to genuinely care for the well-being of others. The construct Oron even notices this, commenting how Death isn't as cold as he would make others think.
Death, you are not so cold as you would have us all believe.
Well, keep that to yourself, old one.
Even Death knows that the horseman, Death, shouldn't act like this, and so he tries to hide his softer side from others so that they only see the executioner and not the man underneath. What the other horsemen embody are all negative things. War is caused by aggression and violence. Fury is rage allowed to flow freely without care, and strife is the turmoil caused by conflict. Yet Death isn't similar to any of those. While they can lead to it, death is not only caused by negative things. It is a natural step in the process of life. As things grow, eventually they stop growing and begin to decay. When too much decays and there isn't enough left to continue living, death will follow. Death is the only non-aggressive trait that any of the horsemen embody. War, fury, and strife are all perpetually cycling things that feed on themselves. Chaos feeds more chaos, wrath feeds more wrath, and unmanaged disorder only leads to more disorder. It is made especially obvious with their special forms. War can transform into his chaos form, Fury into her havoc form, and Strife into his anarchy form, all for a limited amount of time. Yet, death doesn't cause more death, but rather it brings new opportunities. His Reaper form isn't based on a trait, but the symbol of death, the Reaper. And unlike the others who have limited use of theirs, Death seems to be able to control his Reaper form with relative freedom, often using it during enemy executions and for certain combo attacks. Elder Adard indirectly comments on this over the course of his conversations with Death. He makes it clear that the life force, the soul, is something unique and special, with how it can create the Heartstones that power constructs. Heartstones allow a construct to awaken, holding onto fragments of the original soul's memories and personality. When the Guardian is slain,
love
he
this
said that
music
creation
score.
is the task that defines his purpose, and he uses his own soul to forge a new Heartstone for the Guardian to bring it back to life and open the way to the tree. The Guardian's purpose is destruction, yet Idard's is creation. By placing his soul into the Guardian, his same soul purpose changes and is now destruction, not creation. He tells Death that the reaping of souls defines his purpose, yet if the soul of someone is separate from their purpose, Death too must also not be bound by his purpose. His task is killing for the purpose of being the Reaper, but that does not mean that his soul can only ever be that of a killer. When something dies, that doesn't mean it is the end. Their life force continues to flow and give itself to other things. An animal can act as nutrients for other life. Non-living things too, like human structures, can be repurposed into homes for wildlife or recycled into new buildings. Even the loss of a loved one can give new meaning and purpose once grieving is overcome. Just because something is lost, that doesn't always mean that loss is the only thing that can come from it.
Get to the tree now, horseman. Your journey is far from over.
You see it even in tarot readings. The death card is not a bad omen. Rather, it is often a good sign. It shows that there is some part of your life that isn't helping you and needs to be let go of so that your future possibilities can be achieved. There is rarely ever a time in which the death card indicates that something negative will happen, only that there is change of some kind coming. Death isn't just an ending, but a way to let new beginnings happen in place of the old. So of course, out of the horsemen, Death would be the most empathetic and compassionate, even if he did try to hide it. It was interesting to see Death portrayed in such an unusual way. I was so used to personifications of Death being serious and dry, and while Death does act like that early on, underneath the mask he puts up, he is anything but.
You stink of the living, horseman, of souls long overdue. You are not welcome here.
Pity. I was starting to enjoy the atmosphere.
Then you have...
Through the Forge Lands, from Karn's constant requests and wanderlust-fueled distractions, combined with the constant complications in his missions, Death starts to get visibly irritated. He wants to finish this all quickly, so that war isn't waiting any longer than need be.
It is not safe here. For flesh or for stone. There is no shame in turning back.
No point either.
This is quite obvious once he reaches the Dead Kingdom and needs to summon the Eternal Throne. Rather than ringing the bell like he was told to, he enters his Reaper form and just slices the entire bell in half out of frustration. Everything is getting in his way and delaying his mission, and he's getting tired of it all. His frustration is then only further exacerbated when he meets the Chancellor, who refuses to let him meet the Dead King.
A rider? In the kingdom of the dead? No, no, this will never do.
And then again, after meeting the Dead King, who refuses to say anything unless a favor is done.
True. Yet I must face this rabble without the lords who serve me.
That's not my concern.
Make it your concern, and I will grant your request.
Setbacks and annoyances keep piling up, again and again, and eventually, Death completely gives up on his facade of being cold and stoic. During his time on Earth, he aggressively and sarcastically bites at the angel Uriel about the angel's utter failure and defeat by the demons.
Why are the Hellguards still on Earth? You lost Uriel, in case you haven't noticed.
And when meeting Lilith, who calls the execution of the Nephilim his sin, he blows up at her in such a rage where you can almost see the spite and hatred towards her dripping from his words.
Why spare their souls? If not to one day undo your sin,
My sin? This corruption was born in Absalom. It rises from him like a black tide, and you, Mother, must help me stop it. Where is the demon key?
In a world of demons, angels, and godlike beings, Death himself was the most human character. He tried to act cooler than he really was. He felt intimidated and confused when sudden reveals were given to him, and got frustrated when things weren't going the way that he wanted. After the corruption that had been spreading through the land had brought back his older brother, the first of the Nephilim, Absalom, as its champion, Death had to fight him once more in the Well of Souls to complete his mission. All this time, Death had been struggling with a difficult problem. He still held the amulet, now shattered and embedded in his chest, and had learned that the Well of Souls could bring the Nephilim back. It could undo his guilt. However, it could also bring back humanity by sacrificing the Nephilim, and in doing so redeem war. Was he to undo his own mistake and bring the Nephilim back from the dead? Or would he try to protect his family and redeem war by resurrecting humanity?
I've killed Absalom. Stopped the corruption. I stand at last at the Well of Souls, with no idea what I must do next.
It is quite simple, and yet most difficult.
While you personally might not have had to decide between the fates of two races, deciding between family or personal gain is something that everyone has encountered at some point in their lives. In truth, Death's mind was already made up from the start. He threatens and battles the Crowfather, an ancient and extremely powerful being, to force him to give up how he could redeem war. Even after learning the Nephilim could be brought back, and seeing the state of the earth himself, he tells Uriel that he will see war spared of his crime. And when defeating Absalom in the well, Absalom reaches out and asks for his hand, exactly like how he did when the horsemen first betrayed their kin. Yet, Death doesn't even hesitate to walk past, and instead take his scythe back, rather than his brother's hand. From the start of the journey, Death knew that protecting war was far more important, even despite his own guilt. He would never give up his brother to undo his own mistake. I loved Death as I played through the game. In the first game, war was entertaining, but more so due to his uncaring personality and how quickly, yet calmly, he would always jump to the most aggressive method of solving problems. Choosing to make the sequel focused on the character of the horseman, rather than the characters of the people around him, like in the first game, must have been a difficult task. Yet, Nordic Games managed to pull it off masterfully. They took what most people see as a fairly standard character, and changed him into one of the most compelling and emotional protagonists I had ever seen. Darksiders 2 was a game that made me realize a love for the series, and despite the many... Dust, what the hell are you doing? The lighting inside of the forge doesn't seem to agree with Alia's chest. You literally can't even climb if VSync is enabled. Sometimes Redemption just straight up will not reload. It also crashes the final boss if you use it during the battle. Sometimes sound effects decide to just stop playing properly. Bugs and issues with the game on PC, it is still my favorite of the 4 currently released. Being scared of dying is natural. It is the end of a life, and either eternal nothingness or some unknown other world, depending on your beliefs. But the act of death itself is not an inherently negative thing, and even the Reaper of Souls can be someone to empathize with.
My brother wore. I would protect him above all.
To return man to the earth, will require a sacrifice. Thus from death came life, and the seeds of humanity were resown. But death's journey was not ended. War had broken the seventh seal, summoning the horsemen of the apocalypse. And the number of the riders shall ever be 4.
Darksiders has always been a series that I've been a huge fan of, ever since I played the first game. There's just so much that I would love to talk about with 2 that I couldn't really fit into the video. Like, stuff on Karn being a lesson about how no matter how old you get, you can always grow and change. Because he does have a somewhat well-sized character growth over the course of the story. There's also things about how people can be changed by the situations that they get themselves into with the Crowfather. How he's actually pretty nice and helpful, and he just turned into a dick because the Nephilim souls inside of the amulet drove him crazy. That's not who he was. An outside thing turned him into the dick. Plus stuff with Death, how, like, Death has respect for his duties, with how he really, really, really hates the Chancellor, yet will not kill him because, well, the Chancellor isn't meant to die yet. If at all, really. But, Darksiders 2 is a game that has so much detail and so much love put into it that it is just so much fun to play. I love it so much. Which only made me very disappointed when I saw 3 and Genesis. Literally the biggest reason that I love Darksiders, especially 1 and, like, literally the main reason I liked 2, was the voices. It's hard to describe, but in 1 and 2, you can especially hear it if you listen to Samael, where they have a certain, like, growl and pitch to them that just, it felt so nice to listen to. And Darksiders 3 almost completely got rid of that entirely. Sloth had it a little bit, but really the only character was the Lord of Hollows, and he doesn't really talk a huge amount over the course of the game, which, that frustrated. Like, the voice acting quality may have gone up, but the voices were not Darksiders voices, if that makes any sense. It's just, I loved 3, it was a great game, but man, the story needed some work. It especially pissed me off in the introduction. When they're listing out all of the various horsemen and commenting on, like, who you are, what your thing's gonna be, they specifically said that Death, you are the anti-life, the deepest decay. Where, like, anti-life? Literally the entire point of Darksiders 2 was talking about how death isn't the opposite of life. And Ostagoth pretty explicitly says that death is not the opposite of life. The opposite would be nothingness or corruption, which would be the deepest decay. Like, I would say that it's just the council being idiots and not really knowing what they're talking about, which they've been shown to be those types of characters, but then everything they say about war, strife, and fury is right on the mark, yet they get death so horrifically wrong. What? I'm just so confused. Man, Nordic Games, you made Darksiders 2 a masterpiece, and then Darksiders 3 is just so bad at keeping its own rules straight. And especially, I think the thing I was most disappointed with was the shift in prose. In Darksiders 1 especially, and quite a bit in 2, all of the characters spoke in like a really specific, really poetic prose. And 3 just got rid of that. Everyone talks like a normal person, and I don't like that. Like, it doesn't sound like Darksiders anymore. Like, compare in Genesis, when Samael reveals the super forms of war and strife, compared to when he revealed the super form of war in the first game. Like, it's pretty much the exact same thing that he's saying in both cases, but there's such a fundamental difference in how he says it. In the first game, it was all about War finding the rage hidden deep within himself that has always been there, so that he can understand that he is War, the rider of the red horse, and it was ridiculously over the top, and it encouraged War to figure it out himself. Samael really didn't actually do all that much, but in Genesis, it's just kind of, yo, the council has you limited on power. Here, let me snap my fingers, and now everything's better. Like, there's no moment of character growth out of any of it. Samael is literally my absolute most favorite voice in anything ever. No joke, no exaggeration, my favorite. And I skipped his cutscenes in Genesis because his voice was just wrong. I'm very worried about whatever, if there's going to be one, Darksiders 4 is going to be. But, oh well. This video is about Darksiders 2, not 3 in Genesis, and my disappointment with them. But yeah, that's everything that I had to say about Darksiders 2, at least that I could fit into a coherent video. This video initially started when I was trying to figure out a way that I could put Samael's voice into a video somehow. Like, really, that was exclusively it, and everything else was built upon the idea that, like, man, I gotta get Samael's voice because it's that good! And, oh well, I didn't even get to put him in the video at all. His voice lines, while they sound amazing, since they are, like, quite literally the last thing before you enter the well and fight Absalom, they don't really contribute to the character of Death, since you already are quite familiar with him, so I couldn't really include any of them, unfortunately. Oh well. Darksiders 2 is a game that I really, really love.
Alright, I think I think it's a good spot to end. Yeah. I highly agree. Darksiders 2 is easily one of my favorite video games of all time. It's easily, I replayed that so much. It was so good. Very few glitches that I came across, but even still, it didn't hamper my enjoyment of the game because they put a lot of effort into that. And yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one who kind of felt Darksiders 3 and Genesis were lacking in certain areas. I can see his point about the voice acting. Not to say they were phoning it in or anything like that, but there were some sense of gravitas and artistry in the first 2 games because they were telling some kind of big narrative. But with 3 and Genesis, it seems like the same effort wasn't applied. It's like they were like contractually. I want to say, there are certain games you feel like it was contractually obligated to make. 3 and Genesis were just maybe a couple of notes shy of getting to that point. Wasn't all the way there, at least for me, it wasn't all the way there, but they were just a couple of steps shy from getting to that point, especially with 3. So hopefully with the next one they just Darksiders 4 that they tease, I hope there is more effort put into it. And the team that worked on Darksiders 1 and 2 are heavily involved with making sure that one give that same energy. But anyway, I will see you guys in like an hour or so. I can get back to playing some more Expedition 33. I just want to make something to eat really quick and then hop back in. So I will see you all soon. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the Darksiders franchise and what are your opinions on death. Because I love his opinion on death. Because common misconception, mainly because of pop culture, that tend to just make death seem like dry, stoic, impersonable. And I think Darksiders 2, and more recently, in my opinion, the MCU, when they finally introduced Lady Death, Shane had to be an Agatha all along, but there's, those are the primary two that actually gave the concept of the personification of death a particular fun personality. And I think maybe in Supernatural as well, I like that character of death there too. But I think Darksiders 2 and the MCU is the primary two examples I can think of where they actually gave death some layers. And I love the whole concept where it's like, he's not like this cold, unfeeling thing. He actually, for somebody whose job it is to reap souls, he actually has the most empathy. He has more empathy compared to the other horsemen, which is ironic. So anyway, I will see you guys later. Take care. Have a great weekend.